All right, welcome. We will have a smaller group today, it looks like, so that's always fun. We can get personalized and really dig into any specific questions that you all are having today. So thank you guys for joining this overview today. This is going to be an overview of eSPACE work order and asset management, as well as eSPACE event scheduler. The way we typically like to do these is starting out with just a kind of high level overview of what eSPACE is and who we are, how we like to assist churches with being intentional with the facilities that they've been entrusted with. But kind of to kick us off here, I will go ahead and share my screen and we will kind of begin from here. So let me go ahead and share this. Let me get to the right window here. All right. So basically what we're going to do today, as I kind of mentioned, we're just going to cover a little bit about eSPACE, what we do in our system. We'll break down the different components and modules that we offer. I usually like to start on the work order and asset management piece, covering 4 main components like finding work orders, tracking preventative maintenance, tracking your assets, inventory, all that fun stuff. And then after that, we can sync over into the event scheduler piece. We will talk a little bit also about how they tie together. So if I wanted to generate a work order from an event being created, something you could do if you have both modules, as well as closing off a room for certain maintenance that you're doing from the event scheduler side, you could do that kind of stuff as well with them integrated. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The other components that our system offers that I'm not going to talk about as much today, but just to kind of get it out on the table before we dive in, is we do also have the ability to integrate our scheduler with facility components like HVAC, doors, lights, and digital signage. So if you do have an event approved in the calendar, it'll automatically tell your HVAC when to come on and off. It'll tell your doors when to lock and unlock, and even feed those events to like your digital signage. So there's some really cool integrations in the event piece as well. But we will not talk about that as much today unless anybody here has any specific questions regarding that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up to the work order and asset management piece, and we will begin there for today. And as we go through this, if you all have any questions that I can help address, please feel welcome to drop it in the chat, create a question in the Q&A, and I will do my best to get to it. I do also have the ability in this webinar to give you permission to speak. If it's easier to kind of verbalize a question rather than type it, just drop me a message in the chat. More than happy to do that as well. And just so everybody knows, this is being recorded, and the recording will be available to all registrants after the fact. So you will be getting a copy of this later too. So let's go ahead and dive into the work order and asset management piece. So there are really 4 main components when it comes to this system, the work order and asset side. You have your work orders, the find it, fix it things coming in. We're going to talk about a little bit deeper about how requests can come in the system, how we actually get there, what the workflow is like, and all that kind of good stuff. The second piece of the system is going to be preventative maintenance. And really in our system, this could be defined as anything that has a frequency or anything that you need to have reminders for. So basically what'll happen is, it could be anything from a daily cleaning checklist, changing our filters every quarter, checking our fire extinguishers, checking AEDs, walking the roof, sealing the parking lots, cleaning the gutters, list goes on. So what it's going to do here is it's going to remind you when those things need to be done based on a set frequency, but also have the ability to track the history of the things that have been done. So and I'll kind of show you a little more detail about the history and reports in a second here. But it's very important for us to not just get reminders for what's being done, but to have a log and a history of what's been done. How long did that take us? What does success look like in this area? And being able to see that kind of thing. Third component of the system, and I'm gonna go back on each of these a little bit deeper just to give you all a quick kind of 30,000 foot. This piece of it is going to be our equipment and asset tracking component. So if I wanted to look at like this rooftop unit, for instance, not only am I going to be able to find like model and serial numbers, warranty info, when we put it in service, images or attachments that we want to tie to it as well. But a big piece of the system is all these different components I'm going over really quickly, they tie together. So for instance, if I associate a work order with this rooftop unit, I can then have a log of all the history of the maintenance we've done on that rooftop unit. And maybe let's go further than that. Like at the end of the year, let's say I want to run a report and see how many times did we work on all of our rooftop units? What got a new condenser? What needs Freon? What if that maintenance was reactive? What if that was preventative or scheduled maintenance? I can break all those kind of different things down. So, and the fourth piece of the system we'll touch on in just a second that also is integral is inventory. And we define this to be anything replenishable. So let it be filters, buffing pads, cleaning supplies, light bulbs, all of those things we can include here. The kind of fifth unspoken piece I just like to hit on because I am a graph nerd, if anybody knows me here. I love a good graph. And I could also look at something like this where I could say last year, how many work orders did we have? What were the priorities of those work orders? What if that was scheduled maintenance? What was our average time to get the job done? Or what was Billy's time to get the job done? And this is something I really like too. Based on the service categories you define, I can see what kind of issues do we have. So good chunk of housekeeping, janitorial, usually pretty common. And I get red flags when I see something like this is why did we have 19 issues with appliances last year? What can we do to stop wasting time on just checking on our appliances? Do we need to buy new equipment, bite the bullet, buy something new, call it a day? Do we need to train our staff to use it properly? What's actually going on here? So if we wanted to click into this further and get the details of those maintenance items, we absolutely could. If you're multi-site, which campus is the busiest? That's another kind of cool breakdown point. Which one's getting the most wear and tear? Which one needs the most break fix? This could be really helpful to identify too. You can get some very good predictive information about which campuses have the most break fix. So, and then also which day of the week is the busiest. If you guys rely on part-time staff, volunteers, or anything like that, it's very helpful to see here what our busy days of the week are. And then of course, who's getting the most done. And I know churches don't have usually a surplus of maintenance people as shown here, but we've also used this for volunteers. So if I have volunteers that come and help us perform work, we'll track them here. Just like you would get a giving statement at the end of the year, our volunteers would get a statement at the end of the year saying, hey, Gary, thank you so much for helping us. You helped us knock out 5 work orders this last year. And we can go further and say that equated to 4.5 hours of maintenance assistance. So thank you for all you do, or whatever we'd like that to be. So that's kind of 30,000 foot. I'm going to circle back here to the dashboard and we're going to talk a little bit more about the work orders now and what that process looks like. One of the things that I find very common in terms of work order management for churches is they usually do things with pen and paper, or if they have an issue with a work order, sometimes they're just grabbing the facility manager on the shoulder, shaking them, telling them they need something done. And there's no real centralized way to get work orders in the system. And as you can see here, this is kind of how the workflow will look when they're in the system, is we have the ability to assign, manage, prioritize them all when they get here. But the key is we need to make it super easy for our staff to actually get the request into a system like this. It has to be easy for everybody. So there's a few ways you can do it. One, you can make everybody a user. We don't charge per user at all or anything like that. So you can just give them the mobile app on their phone. So we have an app you can get on Android or Apple. People can submit work orders that way. If they're a portal user, that totally works. They can submit it on their computer. But there are a few other ways too, if you don't necessarily want to give them access at all, even though the access could be very restricted. But one of those ways is through a public form. And this is something you do not need a login for. You can embed it on your website. You can just have a link, maybe hyperlinked in the signature of your email. And people can come here and they can just request the work order from here. If they're on their phone, they could take a picture, add it here, and do all that good stuff. And even if they want to come check the status of the work orders they submitted, even if they are not a user, they can still come back here and check on the status of all their tickets by entering their email. But what is cool about this too, and any way you submit the work order, we'll still talk about a few more, but however you submit your work order, the system's smart enough to know who that is. In this case, we're remembering this person's email. It's a required field. And we're going to send them updates as that work order progresses. So when it's created, they get a receipt letting them know we got it. When the work is approved, meaning we've assigned it out or it's been routed automatically to somebody, they get another email. And then whenever the work is completed, they get one last message letting them know. So as I complete the work in eSPACE, it automatically tells the requester, gives them an update so we don't have to manually follow up with them. Another thing while we're on this form, something I've seen a lot of churches do that was relatively creative, is they can paste this link in like a QR code. And there's a free QR code generator that I've liked to use. You could paste this link there and then print those QR codes up and just print them around the facility, put some text underneath that says to request a maintenance item, click here, whatever you'd like that to say. And then people can just walk up to it, scan it with their phone, and then pop up on this form. So that's a pretty cool way of doing it too. All right, one last way to submit work orders we'll cover, and that is the email or text version. I think this is pretty cool as well. So if you guys have an email like facilitiesatyourchurch.com, maintenanceatyourchurch.com, or whatever you would like that to be, folks could actually email or text that request into that address, and it automatically creates a work order. So I'll show you the text version because I'm a big geek over this one too. But basically, you know, they could save the contact as their phone. They could just type it in as the address, and I'll show you what this looks like here. And then from there, you know, we could just take a picture of the problem, type a quick sentence or two, press send. As the requester, that's all they need to do and they're done. So I like this because typically if you're used to just getting requests in by text for your facilities team or by email, this is the same level of effort that people have already been doing. But now, instead of going to that inbox or going to your phone where it's all over the place, it's coming to one centralized system where now you can manage it, you can prioritize it. If you need to assign it to a vendor or anybody else, you could do all of that within the system here. And even with this method, you get the automated reminders, which I mentioned in the form, which is pretty cool. So the system will remember who texted or emailed it in, and it's going to send them up those updates as the work progresses. Cool. Any questions so far on what we've covered at this point? We have a few other details I'm going to go over, but any other questions or any questions at this point so far? Feel free to just drop them in the chat. All right. Well, if you guys are thinking of anything, I'm going to go ahead and keep rolling on. I will stop if I see a question come in, but there's a few other components of the system here that we'll talk about. And we're staying on the work order and asset management side for now. If you just joined pretty recently, we're going to cover the event scheduler probably in about 15 minutes here, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But there's a few other pieces of this I'd like to talk about. In terms of a work order in the system, we just kind of walked through how requests will get added, you know, how people can get requests in the system so we can manage them and prioritize them as appropriate. Let's talk about the workflow a little bit now. So there's a few ways you could set this up. One, maybe you just have a one-man army or one person that's just handling all the maintenance. In that case, it's really wise to set up routing rules. So it goes directly to that person. So every time the work order is submitted, they can just do the work or assign it to a vendor. Very easy. What I do, and the way my system is set up that I'm showing you all today, is I'm like the facility manager here, and I'm assigning the work to the maintenance team. So I'm choosing who's going to do the work here. So all work orders come to me. And the reason I like doing that is people may say it's like a really high priority, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, that is not a high priority. That is a low priority. So I will prioritize them as I see fit and then assign them to my guys. So this is kind of what that would look like as they come in here. And then I have the ability to prioritize them, which I've already done, and assign them. So maybe I'm going to hand this off to Dan because he's the man for the job and we just need him to take a look at this. Maybe I don't really care who gets it done, right? I just need somebody on my facilities team to take care of it. That is the role of the department, is sending it to a group of people. I don't care. One of you guys need to deal with it. And then if it needs to go to an external vendor as well, that's something we keep track of in the system here, and it's pretty cool. So if it's like HVAC, electrical, or plumbing, something along those lines, and we need to assign it to a vendor, we can do so here, and we'll keep track of all your vendors in the system. What's really cool though, is if you assign it to a vendor and you have their email on file, it's going to automatically shoot them an email with the ticket information, and you'll be notified in return when they accept or reject that request. So I really like that process as well. And one of the last things we could do with the work order is we can go ahead and just reject it. So maybe it's really not a maintenance item. Maybe it is like somebody doesn't like the color of the carpets, whatever that is. We'll go ahead and reject that work order and let the person know why. And I do like this too, because it depersonalizes the approach. And some people don't care, but I do. Where instead of me saying, or the person getting a response like, Lee doesn't like you, so he rejected your work order, or he thinks your idea was silly. they will get a response from the system. It's very systemized, not personalized, and say, hey, this is the reason your work order was rejected. Maybe because it's not a maintenance request and it's not going to be tied to anybody's name. It's just being rejected from the system. So I do like that approach as well. Cool. And basically those are the main components of the work order. But if I wanted to add more details to it, I absolutely can. I don't have to do this stuff, but if you also wanted to track costs related to the maintenance here, if it was more of a project and you needed to create a list of tasks that need to be done for this work order, if you need to have conversations back and forth with your team here, if you want to upload before and after attachments so you have a history of what we've actually done and documented it, or even just look at a history for timestamps, you can do all that kind of stuff here too. But going back to the dashboard, we can also just manage it simply like this. So the other thing I like to do when it comes to managing the maintenance, and I'm going to talk about preventative maintenance a little deeper here in just a second, but I love looking at my calendar view. And this is not the event calendar. This is the maintenance calendar, where I can come and see all of the work orders that are coming in, what the ETAs are, and I can manage everything appropriately here. And this will show me both the work orders and scheduled maintenance, as you can see. So I have the ability to check out all this stuff. And if I need to move anything around, like these things, I can just move them over and make my day and my week a little less stressful. Just prioritize things a little better. So very nice for staying organized. If I want to go further and say, like, what's Billy Bob doing for the week? Or what is this vendor doing? When are they coming out? What about just the urgent issues? I can do that kind of thing too. Cool. All right, and let's talk a little bit more about preventative maintenance. And again, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and shoot them out. There are no bad questions here. So I kind of overviewed this very quickly, but I'm going to go ahead and open one up here. And let's take a look at preventative maintenance and see what's behind the hood. So I usually cover this fairly quickly because preventative maintenance in our kind of scenario is the same component of a work order with one difference. That difference is frequency. So how often does that need to happen? So we could add the same details of the work order associated with assets. We can track that thing later. We can see the work we've done on it, create tasks or to-dos for it. Again, if it's like a daily cleaning checklist, this is a great way to use tasks. But what we do at the bottom here is different. So we just choose how often does this need to happen. So how often do we need to be reminded about this? And basically what the system is going to do is it's actually going to generate a new work order for each frequency set. So if this is a biweekly system, it's going to create a new work order biweekly for us to know what's getting done and also track that on our calendar for us, as well as track the history of every single instance what was done. So very helpful that it works that way, but we can come and choose that frequency here, let it be daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or maybe it is really none of these, no set pattern. You could also just choose custom and grab a bunch of dates to work for you. So easy enough. So we choose the dates here of when the work is due, right? Then I get to choose how many days prior should we generate that work order. So we need to give our days do we need to give our guys a 3-day heads up, a 5-day heads up, 2 weeks? You know, how much of a heads up should we get for them to put it on their calendars so that they know what's going on? Here's a good one too. Does anybody else need to be reminded about it? So maybe not just the maintenance guy that's being assigned it, but we want the admin to be aware of it too, so they know what's going on. But here's another good reason I like to do this. A lot of people have vendor contracts they have to keep track of. I will assign the PMs to the external vendor so it sends them reminders, right? Which is fantastic, especially if they're not the most reliable, but I also have them come to me. So as a facility manager, I want to know exactly when my vendors are supposed to be there. And if they're not fulfilling their contracts, I want to know about it. So I'll send myself a reminder 2 days in advance, and I'll even say whatever I want reminded of. So maybe check on the HVAC vendor, make sure they show up for the servicing. So cool. That is preventative maintenance in the system. Quick and easy, right? All right. So there's a lot of other advanced settings we can go through that I'm not going to touch on too much today. One of the ones that I do really like are system alerts. And again, today is really just a high level overview, as high level as we can. But I love some system alerts. So if I want to get a digest of any work that's outstanding that I need to do, get it emailed to me daily or weekly, can totally do that. We didn't talk too much about this, but I love the inventory reorder reminders too. And I see a chat just came in, I'll answer it in 1 second. But what I really like is you can associate inventory to a work order. So if I added cost here and I'm adding inventory to a work order, what's going to happen is, like, let's say do I have any filters here? Let's see. I do. So we'll do this as an example. We have one filter. System's smart enough to know that filter cost me 55 bucks. When my technician closes out this work order, it's going to automatically remove one filter from our inventory on hand. And I can even set up a reorder threshold per inventory item. So if I have a reorder threshold of like 3 filters, once I get below the number of 3 filters, the system will automatically shoot me an email with that system alert, tell me it's time to order more and what vendor to order from. So I really like that piece too. Is preventative maintenance automatically programmed in the software? It is not, because it is different per facility. But what we do have, Saida, is we have a checklist that we are able to import in the system if you've never established a preventative maintenance plan before. So we have, let me find it here. We have this free download you may have seen, and that's actually something that we can import in the system. We would just work with you all. Here it is right here. We would just work with you all to decide who needs to be assigned this work and that kind of thing, and just confirm the frequencies with you all. But I will note this is not a whole standing list, because each facility is different. Let it be geography wise, let it be the material wise. There's a couple different components that could vary the maintenance that would need to be done on that ongoing basis. But great question. Can you tie budget to the reorders? When you say that, so the system isn't actually ordering for you. It's just telling you it's time to order more. Maybe that answers your question. And speaking of budgeting, the one thing that you can do as well, let me make sure this didn't help. Okay, cool. One of the things you can also do is we have our life cycle calculator. So those same assets we were tracking. So I pulled up the rooftop unit earlier. So let's find that here. So boom, we got rooftop unit 1. On this calculator, this is included in the work order and asset management piece, but we can also track the remaining useful life of our assets. So we would plug in the current replacement value and our projected remaining useful life, and the system will split out the rest. So in this case, as today, this would cost $37,500 to replace. With a 6% inflation rate year over year, with 3 years of remaining useful life, this is what it's actually going to cost me in 3 years to replace. Therefore, I need to set aside this much every single year in my budget. And then you can go a little further with that and see the summary broken down of capital reserves. So year over year, what do we need to have on hand? Break all that down for you, as well as identify, and I like playing with the cash flow, because the system's going to project all of your expenses here. And you could just come pencil in your budget, any added deposits throughout the year, and it will give you what you actually have available after capital reserves. So I like that as well. And last but not least, if you wanted to use it for depreciation, you could totally do that too. So that's a cool piece of the system I like to use as well. All right, and those are the main things, at least at a very high level, that I wanted to cover on eSPACE work order and asset management. Before I move on to the event scheduler, I'll give it 2 or 3 minutes here for any questions that come in. But also, is there anything that you wanted to see that I was not able to cover today on the work order and asset management point of view? And there are no bad questions. And if you wanted to see something, maybe you're not sure if our product can do it or not, please feel welcome to share, and I'd be happy to address it. Is this software primarily for maintenance? And I promise I have a reason for asking. What is it that you might have in mind? And the reason I ask is there's actually a lot of people who use the system for maintenance as well as IT ticketing, but also use it for graphic design requests, for HR onboarding checklist. And there's a couple different components that you can use it for outside of facilities. And the way that works very specifically, I'll kind of share this a little bit with you. But if you have a use case in mind, let me know, and I'll be very transparent if it would do good or that or not. But pretty much you can break down different service categories of what needs to be done. So as you see, we have like HR onboarding, we have IT and computers, we have graphic design, all these different components, and everything in our system flows from service categories, including user permissions. So this is really cool because what I can do is maybe I have an admin, which that's the level of permission that they can change settings, they can approve or reject things. I mean, they can do it all, but maybe I just want them the admin of IT stuff. That way I decide what service categories they're the admin for. And like, let's have IT and facilities and using the same system. I can allow it so our IT guy is an admin, but only the admin of IT, facilities is the admin, only the admin of facilities, and they never cross each other's lines. So facilities will never see IT, IT will never see facilities, just based on that user permission, which is really cool. And let me know if I went the wrong direction with that question, but hopefully that makes sense. And kind of on the same line of that, when you're requesting the work orders, you can have like different emails set up. So it's based on service category as well. So if I had an email for IT, I could have IT@yourchurch.com and that routes to the IT director and it's an IT ticket. If it's facilities@yourchurch.com, it could be with a facility service category and then that goes to facility manager and you kind of do it that way. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and another thing too is we don't charge per service category or anything like that, per user, nothing. So we have churches that'll save a lot of money using that for multiple different departments. So that does not go into the cost whatsoever. Beautiful, great questions, and thank you for your engagement, Saida. All right, if there are no other questions here, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the event scheduler side and we'll walk through that very briefly. If a question does come up though, I'm glad to visit back to this piece of it. And there's no bad questions, no bad timing. So if they come up later, just feel free to drop them in the chat there. So let me get ahead and jump over to the event scheduler. And what's beautiful here, again, it's all in the same system. I can just jump between system to system. And the user permissions are different here too. So if you want to have an admin on work order and asset management, but somebody who can just submit events on the event side and not approves things, you can have it set up that way too. So permissions are separate per module. And one of the things before I, no, I'll save that till the end. That's okay. So basically what I can do here is I'm just going to walk through an event that's already been created. I'm going to kind of show you how people can submit events, which like what your typical users are going to see. I'm going to show you the admin view, all that good stuff. But this is what your typical user sees when they log in, just so you guys can get a perspective of this, because a lot of what I'm covering today is administrative settings. This is what your typical user is going to see. They log in, boom, create an event or create a work order. And they can go through this process, create the event, very quick and easy. We found it very important to make it as user-friendly for people as we can. So it's very simple to get things in the system, because what use is a system if you can't get events or work orders in there? So that was very important to us, is make very easy from the ground up. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to walk through an event that I have already created, and we're going to look at some of those details together. And kind of before I dive in here, an event in eSPACE is kind of like a sandwich. So I can get away with the meat and cheese of the event, but if I also wanted to add like lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, and all these things to really beef it and stack it up, I can totally do that too. Now, Lee, why are you talking about lunch in the middle of this presentation? So basically what I mean by that in terms of an event is I can get away with, here's the day, here's the time, here's the room, let's just put it on the calendar. But if I also wanted to come in and add, here's where the tables and chairs go, we need childcare for this event, we want to have billing and invoicing for this, we need to generate work orders for it, we need AV, and we have all these custom forms to fill out, we could do this kind of thing too. So we can get very detailed as to what goes into the event, but we can also keep it very, very, very basic. So let me show you what I mean. So we'll start with the details of the event here. And again, we have our name, start and end time, setup and tear down. We can choose how often the event recurs. And in this case, I just chose our custom option where I'm just grabbing a bunch of dates that work for me. So very quick and easy. And one of the things the system will do is it does have the ability to integrate with Zoom. If you have a virtual event like this one, which is kind of neat, you can just come click this button and boom, create your Zoom link. You can specify if the event's off-site, which campus you're at, if you are multi-site. But here's something really cool is we have an embed code that you can put on your website. And basically any event that is marked as public here, I'm saying this, that I want this to go on my website for the public to see. So by clicking this box, it's going to go through that embed code and show on the website. And we do this because we don't want every event we have to go on the website, but just the ones that we mark as public. Okay. And what we can also do here, I mentioned earlier how we can integrate with like HVAC, doors, digital signage, lights, and those kind of components too. We do also have the ability to override those things, but really they're meant to be a set and forget. It's like if I approve the event, it's automatically telling my HVAC when to come on and off. It's locking and unlocking my doors. But if we need to override those things here too, we absolutely can. So, and again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the integrations today, unless anybody has a specific question. Next tab over, we have contacts. So if we want to add people that need to be contacted about the event, about any updates, changes, people outside of our organization, we can add them here. And then we jump to the items. So these are going to be the rooms. First, we're starting with spaces, which are going to be the scheduled rooms in which the event's taking place. And as you see, we added our rooms here. We kind of have this hierarchy built out. So it's in this building, then this floor, then we'll do the classrooms on that floor, and we chose our rooms. So the green check marks next to the rooms here is letting us know that this is our real-time conflict detection. It's letting us know that we do not have any issues with conflicts here and that we are good to go. No problems, no issues, we can proceed. If there was an issue, we'd get a big red, and it's probably not going to have a conflict, but we're going to have big red letters next to it that says see conflict, and it's going to let you know that that room is not available. And it can show you why as well if you'd like to dig into it further. Next tab over, we have resources. These are going to be our movable items related to the event. So tables, chairs, projectors, coffee pots. And we do also have the ability to inventory these items as well. So if I have 160 chairs on hand, the system's going to make sure I do not overextend past the amount of chairs that I have across all events at that given time. Let's talk about services for a second. So services is basically what I define to be anything with a heartbeat related to your event or anything that's going to have that human interaction. But what's cool with services is you can tie this to a user permission as well. So we talked about admins a little bit. That's your king or queen of the calendar. They can approve or reject events. They can change their settings. I mean, they can do it all. Underneath them, though, is somebody called a subadmin. And the subadmin is somebody that you can assign a specific approval area to. So if we have, let's say we have Susie in charge of social media, any event that I select social media for, Susie's going to automatically get an email about it. And she has the ability to approve or reject that portion of the event being in her approval area. But she can't approve or reject the whole event. It's just the piece in her approval area specifically. So I do really like that side of it. So in this case, our food service person's getting an email, our social media person's getting an email, and my admin is getting an email once we submit this event. Then we go to the setup tab. So these are going to be all the items and components related to the event, the rooms we selected, resources, and services. And this is where we can go a little further with it. As you see, you can add configurations for each room that your users can just come and select from when they're editing the space. Very easy for them to just come and select. And if they want to drop any configure or special notes for their instance, they can absolutely do that as well. And as you can see, we can also specify where those tables and chairs are going to go, exactly what rooms they need to be in. So our facilities team has all this information when it comes to set up their event. The other thing we can do is you see this big blue box that says form next to social media. Is we can create these required forms have to be filled out upon booking certain items. So it's not just okay for us to say we want social media. We have other questions that need to be filled out. And those questions can be done with a checkbox. They could be drop downs. They could be short answer. They could be links to different menus or things like that. You could do all that kind of cool stuff in a form here. And that pretty much is an event in a nutshell. And there are a lot of other tabs here, as you see, that we can add to it. If I wanted to modify occurrences and maybe it's an event with multiple different occurrences, I can just come and modify one of those occurrences without changing the whole series of events. We can generate different schedules for the events if we want, but all of these are really just tools in your tool belt. You're not going to use them for every single event, but they're available if you ever need to. I will talk about this briefly because we hit on work orders earlier. Excuse me. If I wanted to generate a work order for the setup and teardown of this, instead of having the setup report, or if I wanted to, we needed to rent a piece of equipment, we need to build a stage setup or something like that, we can generate a work order from that event with just one click of a button. So very easy to do that. Then two other add-ons that we offer, just to give you guys a heads up, event registration. It is an add-on, it does cost extra, but this is a really great way to register for the event, have the public register. But frankly, if you have a good church management software that handles registration, I'd recommend that you keep it there. The reason I would recommend that is because it's going to tie back to your people, and it's going to tie back to see how many events did Johnny go to in the last year, if it's a good management software. And that's why I recommend keeping it there. But if you don't have that, this is a good option to consider. So just to be transparent with you all on that front, because we focus primarily on facilities, we are not a church management software or a membership database, right? So we are just managing your facility. And there is billing and invoicing as well. So if you guys do have rentals, I actually really recommend billing and invoicing. That way you could actually have a public event request form that people can go on your website online. And actually, I'm going to show you this because I'll kind of draw the line here too between what's an add-on and what's included in the event scheduler alone. But basically, we have an event request form all included in the base package where if you have people that are requesting your space externally, requesting your facility externally, rather than them calling in, checking availability, you call them back and say, no, what about this one, blah, blah, blah. They can just go on a form on your website and fill out all their information. And maybe you need to ask how you heard about you or any other questions you need to ask. And maybe you have a facility usage agreement they need to sign and re-upload, or you need to capture insurance information, all that good stuff. They can do all that and capture it all in this form on your website. Takes them to the next page. They can then choose from the rooms that you make available to them. What's cool with this too is the real-time conflict detection is built into this form as well. So they won't even be able to request a room from you all if it's not available. And then once they do that, the request comes to you and you could decide if you want to modify it or accept it as is. And this is kind of where billing and invoicing comes in, is if you do have that module, you can make it a rental where you can actually assign a dollar figure to any item in your building and bill and invoice them, collect deposits, all that stuff directly in our system, which is kind of cool. And I'll go back to some graphs because, again, I like to geek out over this stuff. Another important thing that I think about is being able to get the data from the events in our building. So not just how many did we have, but how well are we actually using this facility, right? So utilizing the facility is about having other people come and use it, especially if we can impact the community and invite people to our building. And I'll kind of give you, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to give you kind of the idea of the woman of the well, kind of an analogy. So, and this is going to be different from what you've heard from your pastor in the past, but the woman wasn't at the well because she wanted to meet Jesus, right? She was at the well because she was thirsty, and the well in her area was a centralized place in the community. So she just wanted to go and get some water. How can we make our churches like that well, where people are just coming around because it's a centralized place in the community and they may just so happen to meet Jesus there, or Jesus may happen to meet them there? That's how I like to look at events in our church, is how can we host our facilities to be a centralized place to bring people to Jesus? So I like looking at space utilization a lot, because also at the end of the day, I'm paying all the bills for my facility. I want to use it as best as I can and be a good steward of that asset that I've been entrusted with. But also going to see, like, which rooms got the most wear and tear, which ones got the most use, I think is very helpful from a facilities perspective. Which events worked, which didn't, which had the most number of people, which time of the day is the busiest. And I love this too. So it's like, okay, if you have your categories based on ministry, I could see, okay, we did a great job with adult activities last year, great with support groups, but then, how can we re-engage preschoolers this coming year? We only had 3 events with them last year. How can we re-engage middle schoolers? It's going to kind of help you identify those things and see how we can re-engage people at our church. So I think that's really neat too. All right, and that is, I went quick today because they usually have a lot more questions in this, but that is kind of like my high level overview. Just a few other things I'll share on the scheduler. We do also integrate with Google, Outlook, Apple. We integrate with a number of different church management softwares, which I'll show you a few here. You may see one that you use now. I'm happy to talk to you about what that integration looks like. But we have a lot of different integration partners. We can also, I think everybody's on here. Yeah. So lots of different people we integrate with. We're very big on playing friendly with other folks if we can. Some people don't like us though, and that's okay. But hopefully this all makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about smart church solutions, eSPACE in general, from work order and asset management or events, or kind of anything in between? We do not integrate with Realm, unfortunately. I apologize for that. I don't think ACS likes us that well. So even for the non-Realm product that they have, the facility scheduler that we integrate with, they would not do their piece of the integration. So we can only pull data from them for people who want to use facility scheduler and still schedule HVAC and things like that. What's funny, nobody uses it. So we built it and nobody wants to use it, but we would love to integrate with ACS. I just don't think they like us too much. But sorry to break your heart. Cool. Well, any other questions, guys? I'm glad we would wrap up can we convert data from facility scheduler? That we actually can. And here's how. Let me get out of this. So we can actually, if you can export that data to Excel, and this would be the tricky part, is getting an Excel. We have this import template that we can use, and we can import data this way. And basically all we need is like what room it's in. So if you see here, this is the name of the event and then the attributes of the columns. All I would need to know is the event owner's email, or you could just make that one email just to get them in the system. I need the name of the event, the time, and the day, and the room, and that's it. So date, time, room, an event owner, and the name. It's really all I need, and I could upload that stuff. But if you also want to bring over resources, services, categories, all that cool stuff, we can do that too. Conversion. Oh, that's always a good question because it's different. I think it depends on the size of the church, the amount of events you're hosting, as well as your staff's capacity to learn new technology. And to give you a less vague answer, there's a few ways you can go about it. There's one option where we do for onboarding, where we provide 2 hours of setup training. And then we also will take an hour and train your team how to use it after it's been set up. Assuming you have the data that we could just import in the system, all I would recommend for you is go through the 2 hour setup training and then go through an hour of user training, and you could probably be converted in a month, maybe less. If you do not go through the training, it's hard to get the data out. You have to do things by hand or anything like that. That's where it's going to take more time. So I hate to make it so vague. There's just a number of variables that would kind of fall in play there. I've seen some churches get started in a week. I've seen some churches take 6 months to get started. So there's definitely a big variable in terms of people, adaptability, what you can import, how much training you'd like, and that kind of thing too. So I hope that makes sense. Cool. Well, any other questions, guys? This has been good. And thank you for all your questions, Saida. This is very, very helpful. I like when I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself in these. I can get lonely. Awesome. Any Episcopal churches in Atlanta using our software? That's a great question. What I can do, I usually am not supposed to do this, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek. We'll look at some churches in Atlanta. I'm a super user, so I get to look at our accounts and things like that. Let me just see. Let's see who we got in Atlanta. Elizabeth Baptist Church, Central Presbyterian, Cathedral of Christ the King, North Avenue Presbyterian, Trinity Presbyterian, a lot of Baptists. Any of these look familiar? The Cathedral of St. Philip, Trinity Anglican, Atlanta United FC, Mount Vernon Presbyterian School. Sorry, I'm probably zooming through this. And we have a lot of, if I kind of zoom out and go to Georgia, I know we have a lot of people in Georgia. Cathedral of St. Philip, great. And they've been with us for about 3 years now, so they'd be a good person to talk to. And they use both the event scheduler and work order and asset management. So that may be a good one to chat with. Yeah, usually I don't do that. So you guys got a special treat. You got to see all of our clients. Not really. You saw a select handful in Atlanta, but fun enough. All right. Any other questions that I can help with? Thank you so much, Saida, and I appreciate all your engagement. Very, very helpful today. How can we get monthly billing fees? I never showed you all pricing. I usually do that. So we do keep everything on our website here just to show you. Saida, are you all just one campus? Okay. Basically, I'll kind of give you the breakdown. The event scheduler would be, as long as you're scheduling less than 75 rooms, you're looking at just $50 a month. If you paid, I'm sorry, $50 a month if you paid annual, $60 a month if you paid monthly. So just to give you that. And then the work order and asset management piece, as long as you're tracking less than 75 assets for maintenance history, model serial numbers, that kind of stuff, you'll be good to go on that same price. So same goes for annual or monthly. And I like to use this calculator here at the top if you ever want to just really nail it down. And this would be under our website. You hover over software and go to pricing. But for you guys, you would either be, I don't know if you'd want just event scheduler or both, but I would just come here, plug what I want. You guys would probably be just fine under deluxe, which is the one campus option. And then if you do want to add on anything to it, you can kind of factor that in. But what you will need is you will need a setup assistance and customer care plan. And let me kind of show you these real quick at the bottom, because this is like the implementation fee. Oops. So basically, the basic option is we give you all the articles, the videos, and we'll do something called a post setup review for you guys, where we'll reach out 2 to 4 weeks after you've been using the system, and we audit your account, let you know what features you may not be using, that kind of thing. But there's no real hands-on training with that. But you do have access. As your lifetime as a customer, you have unlimited access to our support team through tickets. So you can reach out anytime, have a ticket, and we'll help you out. With the plus option, we'll actually spend 2 hours with your team and help you set up everything. So, and this is best done after you import or input some data. So we have the basics, because we're not going to know what rooms you have and things like that. If that information's in the system, we come in and help you fine tune it, set up user permissions, and really help you get the system ready to rock and roll. And then after that, we would spend an hour and train all of your team how to actually use it. And this really speeds up the onboarding process if you do go with Plus. One of the things I will note, and this is, again, my boss might get mad at me at this, but we do charge $49 a month here for this as well. And all that's going to do is give you access to phone support for as long as you need it. So rather than ticketed support, you'll have a phone number where you or anyone on your team could call us anytime you have a question, and you get very, very quick support back. Even though our basic support is still awesome, we respond in like 12 hours or less. But with Plus, it's like on steroids. But with that, you can turn that off at any point. I've actually found a lot of the clients that I've worked with is if they are set up and trained properly, they usually don't need this after the first month or two. It's really helpful for getting started and kind of picks things up quick, because you can just call anytime you have a problem. But usually you can just turn that off a month or two after. So if you go with that option. So if that helps paint a picture of everything, I think. So kind of to recap at the calculator here, you can come and kind of nail down exactly what you'd be looking at price-wise. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, guys, I don't see any other questions coming in. Saida, thank you for all of your wonderful questions. I really do appreciate it. And if there's any way that we can help serve you guys, you're welcome to reach out on the website. You can come here and contact us, or if you're on this webinar, it's likely you have my email or my colleague Glenn's, or somebody else on the Smart Church Solutions team. If there's any way we can assist you, any questions you have or anything along those lines, or you're ready to get started with eSPACE, just reach out to us and we're happy to kind of advise from there. Well, thank you again so much for your time today, guys. I'm going to go ahead and let you all go if I see no more questions. Thank you, Saida. Have a great day. Take care, everybody.